coming through. Thank you so much. Why don't we just show our appreciation to them once more for their wonderful singing at that time. And you'll get another opportunity to sing at the end of our service today. My name is Bryce. I'm part of the ministry team, and it's so glad to have you here as we celebrate Jesus' birthday here, and just such this joyful time of the year, this important time of the year to us. Now, before we start, hands up if you've already eaten chocolate for breakfast today. Who's done that? Off to a strong start already. You're my people. So good. Now, Pastor Zane asked if some of you have opened your presents already. Who hasn't opened their presents already? Who's still waiting? That's a lot of people. So some of you are like, come on, this had better be good. I'm waiting. For scientific reasons, who's already lost a AA battery or an important instruction manual or a piece of Lego that your foot's going to find later on perhaps? Now here's a question. What makes a great gift? Is it the thought that's put into it, that you have scoured the shops for that one thing that you know that person that's important to you will truly love, and then they'll really just so much appreciate, or at least they will while you're there until you leave the room, perhaps? A few years ago, my mother-in-law gifted me at Christmas time an enormous present box. It was like a refrigerator size, and I thought, great, she's bought me a kayak. And so, anyway, I started to open it, and inside that box was another wrapped box. And inside that box was another wrapped box. And we kept going and going. It felt like I was tunneling to the Earth's core. There was about 7 boxes there, and at the end there was this tiny little box like this, which contained a minuscule gift card, and everyone thought it was hilarious. Amazon actually sells these as a box set, so you can actually buy these gift boxes so that you can give the gift of frustration to those that you love. Let's take a quick time travel. 100 years ago, children were encouraged to write Dear Santa letters, and the parents would sometimes submit those to the local newspaper, and they would publish what those particular gift requests were. Now, based on research from historical newspaper collections, the 10 most commonly requested gifts back in 1913 were these: candy, nuts, rocking horse, doll, mittens, toy train, oranges, books, handkerchiefs, and skates. So basically fruit, sugar, and things made out of wood. It was simpler times. But if you compare that to today, some of 2024, so last year's top Christmas presents, these were them. So noise-cancelling headphones, presumably to drown out the sound of the extended family, drones, gaming consoles, Salomon XT6 designer sneakers, if you know, you know, Lego sets, theme park tickets, and heated jackets. Clothing now comes with a climate control system. What a time that we live in. People have been giving gifts for centuries. Some people say that it dates back to St. Nicholas and his generosity, and he got a reputation for that. But I think that it actually stems from the wise men giving gifts to Jesus. It's been a bit of a theme of our service this morning, and I want to focus on the wise men just for a few minutes now to talk about who they are and what their gifts actually meant. So if you were to find where they were referred to in the Bible, they're in the book of Matthew, chapter 2. And it says this. It says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. Now, this picture of 3 men on camels in the desert, it's a very iconic picture of Christmas, isn't it? We see that and we recognize that as belonging to the Christmas story. Now, who were the Magi? They were scholarly types. They were brilliant. We call them wise men. Magi is actually short for magician. So they were people who watched the stars, and in their astrology, they actually saw this star in the sky. If they lived today, they'd probably have PhDs, they would work at a university, they would have a YouTube subscriber list with like 2 million people, and they would tell about black holes or something like that. So they were very wise people. And what absolutely staggers me about this story is that how little information they had to go on. They saw a star in the sky. And on the basis of that, they then set out on this journey from the east. If you know the geography, there is a whole lot of desert east of Israel, and then you reach Iraq, Babylon. They've come from that area. It would have taken them months, even by camel, to have traveled, but they were so compelled with the star that they saw in the sky that they traveled hundreds of kilometers to go and investigate. And they didn't even try and sneak in quietly to see what had happened. They went straight to the capital city, Jerusalem, and met with the most dangerous person in the whole area, King Herod, to ask the question of, where is the real king of the Jews? We're here to see the real king of the Jews, not you. It's like turning up to Parliament House and saying, we're here to see the new Prime Minister. And they probably thought that that was just common knowledge. We're here to see the king of the Jews. We're here to worship him. But it wasn't common knowledge, and they didn't realize that they were saying something new and controversial here. Because when King Herod heard this, he panicked. The story goes on to say this in verse 3. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, that's putting it mildly, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied. The chief priests had all been brought together. Herod didn't know. He obviously didn't know the Old Testament, didn't know the Bible, and so he had to ask these chief priests, and they didn't even blink. They said, yep, it's in Bethlehem, 8 kilometers down the road. That's where it's going to be. Imagine the wise men saying, so good, we've traveled deserts, we've crossed rivers, we've dodged dangers, and now here we are. We've been doing this for months now. Do you want to come with us just the last 8 kilometers down the road? Here's the strange part. So good. Well, that's the thing. This is such a strange part, isn't it? That the chief priests could literally have gone to Bethlehem, checked it out, and been back by lunchtime. But instead they're like, no, we're good. We've got meetings. Bethlehem's that way. Mount of Olives, turn left. You can't miss it. And so the wise men must have thought that was so strange. They were there to see the King of the Jews. They'd seen the star. No one knew about it. And then when they found out the place where he was to be born, no one wanted to make the travel with them. The teachers of the law, they knew the scriptures, but it hadn't affected their heart. They had all the knowledge. They knew it all, but it didn't change anything about their life. This is what was spoken about Jesus hundreds of years earlier. We see this in the book of Isaiah. It's talking about Jesus, and it says, he, Jesus, grew up before him, God, like a tender shoot and like a root out of dry ground. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering. The Messiah, the Christ, would grow up like a root in dry ground. There would be a spiritual deadness, hardness to the people. And that's the way that he would grow up. He wouldn't be accepted by his own people. They would reject him. But outsiders would seek him and they would receive him. They would respond to him. The wise men were probably so amazed that they'd come this whole way and no one was prepared to take the 8-kilometer journey to Bethlehem, just up the road, to see if these things were true. Now, before the wise men left for Bethlehem, King Herod called a sneaky, secret meeting with them. We see this in verse 7. It says here, then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him. Yeah, right. Just like me going across the road to the Janus store there just to look at the donuts, right? He wasn't going to worship anybody. He didn't want to have anyone opposing his power. He was a brutal king, and so he had sent them off to find out what was going on because there was no way a new king was going to take his place. But then something beautiful happens. In verse 9 it says, after they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. They'd come all this way, they'd made it to Jerusalem, but then they thought, well, we haven't been to Bethlehem before. Where's Bethlehem? How are we ever going to find this special person in this strange place? But then as they headed out, there was the star that they'd seen before, but now it was going ahead of them. And it says that they were overjoyed. In other translations, it says that they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. It wasn't just that they were joyful, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy because they could perceive that the heavens themselves were doing something strange and special, guiding them towards this special person that they were meant to meet. What an amazing thing. I love that. Verse 11 says, on coming to the house, so the star has gone ahead of them, it's stopped over the place where the child is. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. Now, let's be real. These are not the kind of gifts that you give to a toddler. And I wonder if you've ever wondered why these strange gifts, gold, frankincense, myrrh, what are they? Why do they matter? Why do they pop up here? Normally you would give a rattle or a dolly or something like that to an infant. Why would you give these kinds of gifts? But these three gifts of the Magi, they matter. Because in the Old Testament, in Exodus chapter 30, we see all three of these mentioned in the one chapter in the Bible, one after the other. And they're all about worship of God in the temple. So firstly, we see the gold there. Everything in the temple was to be made of gold. Gold was the most valuable metal of the time. It doesn't corrode. And so everything was to be made of gold, was to be pure. There's myrrh. Exodus chapter 30 goes on to talk about the myrrh. It was to be one of the main ingredients of the anointing oil. And so the priests would anoint everything in the temple, and everything that the anointing oil touched was made holy in the sight of God. Myrrh. And then lastly, the very next paragraph talks about frankincense, the most expensive component of the special incense which the priests would offer up in the temple. As the priest would come to pray, he'd take some of the incense and sprinkle it on the coals, and then the puff of smoke would go up, that fragrant incense. And as he would pray, it was like the prayers ascending to God, this beautiful, sweet-smelling aroma to God. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Not gifts that you would normally give to any toddler, but they are gifts the kind of gifts you would bring if you were coming to worship Almighty God. Now, the wise men must have been aware of Exodus 30 to understand that if they were going to be coming before one who was God, that this is the way that you would do it. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And the significant thing is that these grown men, these wise men, men who would have had quite a stature in their own country, after they'd presented their gifts, it says that they fell down and they worshipped him. Now, it doesn't mean that they just knelt, but the word means to actually fall prostrate before this one. This child, they could perceive there was something very special, because even the heavens themselves had directed them to this very special person. Nobody usually worships before baby princes. A few years ago, you might remember Prince George was born. He was born to William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales. And after he was born, the parents received about 700 gifts. He got an amphibious boat, he got a bike, he got all kinds of things like this. But nobody was bowing before little Prince George. But here we see the wise men bowing down before Jesus. Because they knew, because with that star that had appeared, they knew something had encountered, that encountered something strange from beyond this world, that there was a bigger story which was being written here that they were witnessing. And this child they've been seeking for months hadn't just been born, he had come. He had landed. He had disembarked. This child had arrived. He hadn't just been born, he had arrived. Let me leave you with this. So Donna and I, wife Donna, we have two children, Hannah and Josh. And a few years ago, we, at a Christmas time, they were very little, gave them some gifts, and there was one large box which was part of it. They opened that big one, probably first, and then proceeded to leave the gift to one side and to play with the box. They found it so fascinating that spent hours playing with the box, probably turning it into like a spaceship or something like that. They just loved playing with the box. Now, we look at that and we smile. That's the kind of things that the kids do. They would play with the box and leave the gift to one side. But in a sense, they valued the wrong thing, didn't they? My wife and I, Donna, we had chosen out a special gift for them, a particular gift we thought would be a blessing to them. They left it to one side and they played with the box and the wrapping paper and all of those things. And don't we do that ourselves sometimes? But God offers us his son, his precious son, and all of the peace and his presence and forgiveness and joy and being right with God that is to us. And yet at Christmas time, we get caught up with the box, the wrapping, the noise, the food and drink, the celebrations, all of the things that Christmas has become here in Australia. We get caught up in all of these things, the wrapping of the season, the temporary things, maybe the wrong things. Now, the wise men didn't do that. They saw past the wrapping. What they saw was very young parents in an obscure village in a very ordinary kind of house. But they looked past all of that kind of wrapping. They could see what was really going on here, the special child who was born, and they fell down and worshiped. And this is the picture that I want to leave with you this morning. That if you want to connect with God today, this is the way to do it. To bring yourself, offer yourself. The most important thing you have, the most valuable thing that you have, really the one thing that you truly do possess is yourself. To bring that before God in worship. This is the one thing that is worth crossing deserts for. Well, Merry Christmas, everyone, and God bless you.